You know what? Yeah, I was smoking when I was 16. And then let me tell you what happened after that. I went on to be the first person to graduate from college in my family.
I smoke weed and I went to Harvard.
I went on to be a United States naval officer.
I smoke weed and I have an MBA.
I went on to be a corporate executive in Fortune 100 companies.
I smoke weed and I used to work on Wall Street.
I went on to be the first black woman to own a dispensary and edible company and a growth facility in Colorado.
I smoke weed and I work for a cannabis startup.
That's what a pothead does.
Yo, this is an industry that's really happening and women have a chance to be a part of it. Estro Haze is a media company focused on bringing the business and lifestyles of women in cannabis to the masses, particularly women of color.
I literally drove from Sugar Land, Texas, to Colorado, got into the industry. We are a minority-focused business development and management company.
The most common misconception from outside is that we're all stoners. What we're trying to do is create a really welcoming retail experience as opposed to intimidating and scary and illegal.
I hate to break it to everybody, but this is a business. I come into the office, I meet with my staff, I meet with my marketing director, I meet with my controller. At the end of the day, if you don't understand HR issues, if you don't understand hiring and firing, if you don't understand basic accounting, if you don't understand basic marketing, then you're not going to survive in this business.
Cannabis has all kind of hurdles that you have to get over. It's not federally legal, we know that.
I mean, when we started, there wasn't even a category within Colorado to go down to the city to say, I'm applying for a medical marijuana license.
And then to top it all off, you're a woman of color. You're a woman and then a woman of color.
Now that it is legalized, whether medicinal or recreational, why is it important for us to have a position in this industry as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as employees, and or as investors? It's very important because this industry was built on our backs.
My job is to make sure that that door is not opened, but that door is kicked the fuck down so that more people can come through it.
Historically, cannabis was something that overwhelmingly penalized people of color, and especially men of color. And now, as the industry starts to legalize, the ones who are benefiting are, white men. And so it's an interesting subject being a woman of color in this industry.
The race thing in this industry is real. The social justice aspect of it, we can't lose sight of that.
I began to learn more about how and why it became illegal. And I got really pissed off because I thought it was this drug. And so I believe that all people of color, especially African Americans and Latinos, we've experienced travesty, devastation due to the failed war on drugs.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse.
It's turning our cities into battle zones. You will be caught, and when you're caught, you will be prosecuted, and once you're convicted, you will do time.
There's now an understanding that the war on drugs was an abject failure.
We've spent over $1 trillion on a failed war on drugs that concentrates on prohibition and punishment.
Forbes reports on a remark by a former Nixon aide hinting that the war on drugs had a hidden purpose, that President Nixon saw the drug crackdown as a way to arrest blacks and anti-war protesters.
I realize a lot of my sisters and brothers aren't able to be out here because they're incarcerated, and we know that the war on drugs has been a war on us.
It's really fucked up that it's people still in jail, people that look like us, and people are out here selling. That is not right, and we will fight every day until that is not happening.
My brother was actually the first person that I had ever met that had been arrested for cannabis. He grew up in South Dallas. I grew up here in Colorado. When I went to school at the University of Colorado, CUPD would walk by, see me and 3 of my white girlfriends on the steps roll and be like, hey, put it away, put it away. Be like, all right, we put it away, cops go, we bring it back out and start rolling again. I've got to say, I've never had a fear of being arrested for cannabis because in my very, very non-Black world, nobody got arrested. When my brother told me he had a felony and just got out of prison, my heart sank, my stomach tightened up because I thought the next words out of my brother's mouth were going to be he raped somebody, he killed somebody, he did something really horrible. When he said 4 ounces of weed, I didn't believe him. Because who goes to jail for 4 ounces of weed?
I became convinced after a period of time that marijuana was not a safety risk. And I also think the way marijuana cases historically have been handled ultimately has not been fair, and I'll give you some of the data that suggests that. In 2017, about 86% of the individuals who were arrested with marijuana, either possession or smoking, were men and women of color. In Manhattan, for every 1 white person who was arrested for possessing or smoking marijuana, 15 men and women of color were arrested. Now we know that white men and women use and smoke marijuana the same as men and women of color. So there's really no difference in how they use it, but the enforcement was much harder on communities of color.
They came after Black and brown boys because A, they had no ability to defend themselves. They had no ability to have money to have a lawyer. And this became our mass incarceration, our slave labor class. So this is where we make sure that all of the joints are actually a gram. Why do we do this? Right now, it's not about money. You know, we have not turned a profit yet in cannabis because we are selling a Schedule I illegal drug. For us, it's social justice.
How can we have more representation of women and minorities in the industry, and not just representation, but leadership, and not just leadership, but community?
We need to stop the culture of competition amongst women because when men, and especially white men, own 77% of political power, 89% of CEO power, 98% of wealth, we need to have a spirit of, yeah, girl, let's do this.
And in the cannabis industry, I mean, it's the fastest growing industry in America. Not one of them, but the fastest growing industry in America.
When I became an entrepreneur, young Black women were not the #1 business starters in America. Today, we are.
This industry allows us to leave a legacy. It's about being focused. It's about aligning with the right people. It's about not giving up. And once you understand that and understand what your purpose is, you become unstoppable.